Welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, to create value, and to build what's next. I'm Preston Chandler, and together with my normal co host, JL, we lead Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark that creativity that we need to innovate, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation coaching and strategy. Today's guest, I'm excited for. I bring to you Tamara Laine. She's an Emmy award-winning journalist turned FinTech founder. That's a weird one. So we're going to have a question about that, just to hear about that transition. And she's building the infrastructure for financial inclusion in the AI era. Tamara is the co-founder of Empower, which is a platform for reimagining credit scoring through some alternative data, through behavioral analytics, and through some AI-powered coaching. With a background in storytelling and growth strategy, she's spent a lot of her career connecting dots that others tend to miss. She's been able to touch things from media to startups to equity-centered tech, and her work is really a bold challenge to some outdated systems that are leaving millions behind. So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about designing technology that people can trust, rethinking how we measure credit and creditworthiness, and how innovation really can become transformative. And that starts with having some equity and justice. So Tamara, again, welcome to Breakthrough Innovation. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. That was a very fun introduction. I'm thrilled to be here. I love talking about things that press innovation and that make us think deeper about it.
So why don't you first talk to us a little bit about your journey? How did you go from journalism to FinTech, and how has storytelling really shaped that background?
Yeah, I at first started to think that my journey was, chaotic and nonlinear and was concerned about that. And as I've grown and as I've worked with startups and helped launch companies, I've actually realized what an asset having a diverse background is, and especially mine, which I love starting out in journalism. So I can give the quick version, which is I started out my career as an investigative journalist on air in the Northeast. And I really got some of the best experience of my life because what I learned was how to become an expert in all these different fields that I was investigating. Because my job was to figure out what the problem was, who the key players were, connect the dots of this very complex story, and then present it to the masses in a comprehensive, or comprehensible way, um, and do it in under 3 minutes usually, right? So that was probably like the best skill I could ever learn, especially when it came to then working with startups and helping launch companies, right? Because as a founder, as an innovator, what you see is you see a problem. And then you go, okay, how do I solve this problem? And it is never linear. It's not just this. If it was, everybody would be a founder. What innovation is, and especially, technology, deep technology, it's seeing the problem and then ping-ponging or, going back and forth until you land on that great solution. And then the challenge begins. It's not finding the solution, it's then convincing people that your solution is the right one and getting them to trust it to use it, right? And so, like, that whole journey, I can look at and I can really pinpoint how journalism, how investigative reporting was pivotal in me now understanding that as a founder.
I think as you were talking, it brought to mind something that I'm hearing more and more about, which is M-shaped people. So I-shaped individuals, they have one area of depth. We used to talk about T-shaped, which is one area of depth and a little breadth. And then M-shaped is like multiple areas of depth where you understand multiple disciplines. And to me, I feel like that's what you're describing in your background, is that you were able to learn multiple disciplines, which made you better at identifying problems and possible solutions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really what founders need, right?
Yeah.
Because that M shape also not only identifying and being able to then solve the problems, but you're also then working with people. You have to lead, you have to market, you have to do all of these things. And and those skills are what really make a good startup from 0 to 1 and then, 100 million. The people who have, and there's nothing against this because there are experts that then pair with, co-founders that are technical and pair, you bring in all the experts around you. But the diversity of experience in founders and the nonlinear path to becoming a founder really does give this breadth of experience that you don't find anywhere else.
That's wonderful. And it's something I think I see in most of the successful founders is that they have this breadth of experience. They are able to talk with people who have different specialties and can connect some of those dots. So I want to hear a little bit about how you're connecting dots at Empower. So you're tackling this outdated system with traditional credit scores and really looking at why those scores aren't working, they're no longer enough. So what does a more human-centric credit model look like?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background. We'll back up a little bit and say kind of what made me think of, how did I spot this problem? So, for my career, over half my career, I was a gig worker, right? Which means that I didn't earn a W 2. So now over half the US workforce is gig workers. I started out a long time ago. I was freelance writing, I was freelance reporting, I was doing work for MTV and HBO and all these things as I was, coming up as a filmmaker and a journalist. I was dance choreographer, right? My 20s were very broad. I did a lot of stuff, but none of even though I was making a lot of money, it didn't equal great credit. Now, I didn't understand it. All I understood was I couldn't get credit cards, I couldn't get loans, apartments were very hard to come by, all of these things made my life incredibly difficult, but my financial fluency wasn't there, right? So then fast forward, I work as a journalist for a very long time. I help launch 3 media companies. I start working as a fractional CMO, and I'm on the flip side of this, and I am now an executive, but back to a 1099 because now I'm consulting. And it's funny, it's full circle. I'm seeing these difficulties again. And so I had been working in financial fluency for about 5 years. I'd been working with companies where we were looking at small businesses and their challenges accessing credit. And I started to think, what is wrong with our system where now it seems like over half the US workforce has a hard time accessing credit? Small businesses have a terrible time accessing capital. It affects women so much. What's going on here? And as I started to dig deeper, I started to see the financial system is not built for people who don't make W 2s, right? Our
Right,
financial
right,
system was really built in the 1950s. That's before women could get a credit card. Like the pipes of our system, they are built to be exclusionary. And that's okay if you notice it and you can change it, right? Like now we're in a place where we're going, this doesn't work for everybody. We need to change the system. And so as I did that and I started to go, okay, well, what can we do? Because the financial system is obviously huge and the pipes, it's like the pipes of the house, right? I live in a 300-year-old house. The pipes in here, there's old pipes, new pipes, all put together, right? That's our financial system. So now as AI comes into the picture, we have a real opportunity to make substantial change for people to have access to great financial products, right? And that means everybody. And we can look at it in a brand new way and we can have people who we can be inclusive. The people that we serve can now be a part of this process, right? So it doesn't have to be built by just a few. We can bring in all the people who need to be served. So I saw that opportunity and I said, this is where Empower needs to come in. Leveraging AI, and I'll tell you more about our system, we can bring in the holistic picture of who a person is. And we can create better credit profiles for them. And we can also create better ways for them to access, repay credit and loans, and have a better way of building wealth. So, like, now it's at our fingertips. We just need to be able to do it and do it in the right way. And so that's what Empower is. Empower now, we create a holistic credit profile of we're here for gig workers and we're creating a way for them to access credit easier. And then the financial fluency, that coach, in order for them to then repay it and know what they need to do in order to have a financially thrive.
So as you're talking, I think that many founders are looking for the next big thing. And certainly what you're describing is a big thing, but it feels maybe a bit more like the right thing. So talk to me a little bit about that. How do you focus on, or how important is it for you to focus on the right thing instead of the big thing?
So you're raising a really big question, one that I love, which is, there's so many people who can innovate, but just because there's a big opportunity in front of you doesn't mean that you should be doing it, right? Good innovation is something different than just innovation. and innovation with purpose that affects people is better than just doing something. And so, one of the things I work with a lot of founders and talk with a lot of founders, that just want to create a product, right? And AI is huge in this right now. AI, you've got so many
Yeah.
products that are coming out, but it's noisy, right? You actually have just tons of products that you call like chat GPT wrappers that you're getting all the time. And that's why I think it's 97% of AI companies right now are failing because it's innovation for innovation's sake, right? Not innovation for solving someone's problem and doing it in the right way. And an example of this is something that we've been looking at, and it's kind of a challenge for anyone out there in AI, is how do you create AI that uses less energy? Right? And so if your innovation can do does more and does it in the right way, you're doing the right thing. Innovation for just to be doing something big and for innovation's sake, I think that's where you set yourself up for failure.
So finding what is that actual human problem to solve, not what's some cool application of technology, but what's the human problem to solve? What's the greatest impact that we could have for human beings?
Yeah, that too, right? It's creating good technology, right? It's creating technology that's got value. What is they used to say triple bottom line? I don't think they use that saying anymore, but it's like it's
Right.
good for people, it's good for business, it's good for the earth, right? Like innovation, you should be thinking about it more holistically than just I'm going to create a new company, right? Based on new technology. Because if that's the case, I mean, look, you can capture lightning in a bottle, but most likely you're going to be just struggling in the noise.
So from that perspective of trying to create something that's good for people, good for the environment, good for the company, um, I think often people might not even realize that it's good for them, particularly when we talk about financial systems and for those who have historically been harmed by those financial systems. So what's some things that you've learned about financial innovation that helps actually build trust with those people who have not had a whole lot of trust in the financial system?
I think that is one of the biggest challenges, right? It is one of the biggest challenges with things that are new. You talk about that in medicine, you talk about that in technology, especially financial technology. Trust is the foundation of a great product, and building that is very, very tricky. So, one of the things with building trust is transparency, right? And that, if you can create a system that's transparent, then you're setting yourself up for success and for trust, right? Because then you don't have to constantly be explaining or, like when you're innovating, use the word innovation so much. When you're building something, you are inevitably going to run into problems and things are going to fail. And if you have transparency, then your community is going to be there with you versus judging you and waiting for answers, right? And so when I was a CMO for companies, I always built this in, right? I always built in the risk model of what can we do to mitigate any risk. And if you create systems that show transparency, you're going to be mitigating a huge risk as you're building because just inevitably things will go wrong. And I think I look back at some great case studies. Slack did this well, Salesforce did this well, right? Like Salesforce, they came up with a page where you could see if there was outages, right? And they did this after some huge problems, but building in that transparency made things so much better for the company and customers were more loyal and then they trusted them more, right? And they trusted they could use the product. So in all of the innovation, especially in finance, and I'm looking at it specifically through credit, right? Because
Yeah.
people want to understand how their credit's made. And right now, a large majority do not understand that system. So as we build, and I look at building trust, the transparency in how your credit profile is made is one of the number one things that we are doing.
So I think this is interesting because many companies, particularly larger companies, become stagnant because they are trying to mitigate risk, but they're not trying to mitigate risk through transparency, which you're describing. They often try to mitigate risk by making it not an innovative or creative solution. So we can't change because then that's risky. I really like your perspective on even though you do have to change, if you can make it transparent, that's mitigating the risk. The transparency mitigates the risk. It's not stop innovating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an interesting point too, because I wasn't even thinking about that. often come from my point of view as an investigative journalist, where I say people are going to find out.
Yeah, that,
Like
or-
stuff comes
yeah,
out.
yeah. Yeah, those companies, if you don't change, you will fail. Like the big risk is that you're going to fail if you continue what you're doing. Whatever you're doing today, however good it is today, if you just continue it, you're going to fail. So I love that position of, well, there's already the risk. The risk exists. Somebody's going to find out. The company is not going to succeed doing this for 100 years.
Yeah.
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 I think if we could just help people correctly identify some of those risks, companies actually identify those risks, and prioritize them, I think would feel much better for most of us.
Well, I think it's easier for the younger companies, right? Because they're more agile. When you talk about the big legacy companies that are trying to move, you're talking about
Yeah.
battle, right? Like how do you turn that ship? You've got to go through so many departments and legal compliance checks in order to create anything new, and so it's hard. But you've got these younger companies who are agile, who are building transparency into the process, or building that sort of community relationship that builds trust, and they're doing it from the start.
And it's much easier from the start. That's true. Tamara, I have one final question for you before we wrap up. You have your own podcast.
Mhm.
I mean, it's great for you to join us. Your podcast is What the Frack, and you end up calling out a bunch of BS with business growth and innovation. So I want to hear just a couple things from you. What are some myths or buzzwords that you're tired of hearing?
So what I love about our podcast is we talk to business leaders, and we find growth hacks, growth problems, and we do try to call out the BS in it of what's working, what's not. And right now, the thing that I've been struggling the most with that I hear is authenticity. Authenticity is the key to everything right now, right? It's like the cottage cheese of business. If you're authentic, your community will come. If you're authentic, your marketing will be brilliant. If you're authentic, but then at the same time, everybody is rushing to use AI products, right? And so the authenticity is like this jumbled word that doesn't really mean anything at the moment. And so, if there was one thing that I would call out, like, I don't want to hear the word anymore, because if you're saying it, you're probably not doing it. It's something in business that it's like authenticity shouldn't be something that you have to cultivate. It should be just inherent. Be you. Stick to your values. Make your mission, your values, your company culture. That's authentic. Telling your whole team that you have to be authentic and do marketing, it means that you've lost your way.
It's like the what's the one rule about Fight Club? You don't talk about Fight Club. It's like, don't, if you say you're authentic, then you're obviously not.
Yeah. And I mean, you'll just see it all over right now on any social media platform that you go to. And I can't stomach it anymore.
Thank you, Tamara. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you? Where can they learn about the work that you're doing and potentially collaborate?
Yeah, no, find me on LinkedIn. You can find me. It's Tamara Laine on LinkedIn. Send me a message. I'd love to connect with you. We've got What the Frack. We also have that page if you want to send us a question. It's fun. I love talking with people.
Thank you, Tamara. It has been a pleasure to have you on. I'm grateful to hear your insights. Thank you for joining us until the end, everybody who's listening. If you feel like today's episode brought you value, then please consider leaving a rating, a review, following the podcast wherever you're listening to it. If you know of anybody else who's interested in the stuff that Tamara talked about today, of not just trying to be authentic in quotes, but really being transparent and doing the things that matter, feel free to share this episode. Reach out to Tamara if you have additional questions and would like to connect. And I think the thing that I try to make sure we get out of every one of these episodes is to take one actionable insight from today. Take something that you've learned, something that Tamara has said, apply it, and then let us know how it goes. JL and I love hearing about people's progress and what you're doing and what you're learning. And again, thanks. We'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.